Testing? Testing? Welcome to the Blank Tape Podcast.
They found a piece of metal in her foot. They lost an hour, and that was like shortly after. And then shortly after all of that went down, my mom was like, I'm pregnant. And then I was born on Friday the 13th.
So Taylor's
You
an
an
alien,
alien?
baby. In short.
Are you?
I don't want to talk
Are
about
you
it.
an alien?
So, you know what? Maybe that's why I need therapy.
You're just destined to be this.
I'm a Scorpio. Hello and welcome to the Blank Tape Podcast. I am one of 3 hosts, owners, and operators here, located at Plaza right off the highway. We found a huge box of these empty VHS tapes in this recorder, and the late night just can get pretty boring, and with a name like the Blank Tape Video Store, you can assume we don't get too much business. So you're welcome to come spend the night with us as we hang out during our graveyard shift. This is tape number 1, and today's date is, and it is currently, allow me to introduce myself. I'm Taylor. I'm the resident horror expert here at the Blank Tape Video Store. Some fun facts about me is I was actually born on Friday the 13th, which explains a lot. My first ever horror movie was when I was 4 years old. I snuck a copy of the 2000s remake of 13 Ghosts into my room, and I watched it on my little princess TV. You know, like the little pink ones. It's my hope that I can bring in a new generation of horror fans. I do love a slow burn horror movie, but I'm also a big, massive fan of the classic slashers, the big titles that everybody knows. But I do have some, more niche films that I hope to share with my fellow co-workers. I think I have a lot to thank for my brother Andrew for showing me Halloween when I was really young and standing in the corner dressed up as Michael Myers and scaring the shit out of me. But that's besides the point. I do think that what's really interesting about this podcast is going to be our 3 different levels of expertise. I just remember showing Sam Midsummer for the first time, and she had her heads underneath the blankets the whole time, and we were just laughing at her because she was scared of everything in it. And I think it's going to be a really fun aspect to see, because most of the time when horror fans watch a horror movie, sometimes they're desensitized and they aren't so scared of it. So I do think that will be an interesting aspect to have. Here at the Blank Tape Video Store, we talk about all things horror, both fact and fiction, and we do it all with the help of my lovely co-workers, Rosa and Sam.
Hello, listeners. My name is Rosa, and welcome to the Blank Tape Podcast. I'm a longtime ghost believer and lover of spooky things, but surprisingly I got into horror movies later in life. As someone who grew up in a haunted house, I loved learning about the paranormal, but horror movies turned me into jello anytime I tried to watch them. Until I was 14 anyway. That's when I watched The Woman in Black, and found the value in the horror genre's unique methods in storytelling and exploration of humanity, which to me is important as the resident writer. Since then, I've expanded my horror horizons, get it, and knowledge about the genre, and I'm excited to discuss it further in the break room. See you there.
Boo! Did I scare you? Hello, friends, and everyone from the other side. My name is Sam, a scaredy cat who loves horror games and eats way too much popcorn. To be completely honest, I never really liked horror. I was too scared to get involved with it. As a matter of fact, every time this came around on TV, I immediately changed the channel. With my dad, of course, a longtime horror enthusiast, it was a daily struggle deciding whether to watch The Ring or Kung Fu Panda. We always ended up watching Kung Fu Panda. Once I got into the world of horror games, everything changed. Now, I spend most of my life savings that are meant to be for groceries, loans, school debts, essential living necessities. I spend most of my money on horror games on sale. As a newbie to horror, I am excited to know more about the genre, have a few spooks, and communicate with the beyond. Just kidding. If there is one rule I have is never play with a Ouija board. I am not conjuring any spirits into my sacred home. That's where my kitchen is. I'm not opening any portals into my kitchen. I don't want to be scared of my own kitchen. Plus, conjuring spirits is not for Mexican people.
Today's tape is going to be our little introduction. The horror movies that have stuck with us through the years. What makes us tuck our feet under our blankets at night. And what we call our favorite horror films of all time. Now that we've been formally introduced, let's get started. Sit back and rewind. Warning ahead, there's gonna be spoilers, obviously. You can't talk about a movie that you like without going in depth.
I mean, I'll do my best to not give spoilers.
Do your best, but if it's unavoidable and it's like a good plot point that like makes it a really good movie for you, go for it.
Alright, so my number one, there's gonna be spoilers.
And that's fine,
Let's
because
go.
you know what? You agreed to listen to this.
You signed the contract.
You've signed the
listeners.
contract of death. You're not gonna die.
I don't know, maybe. We can't promise anything.
7 days. So my third favorite horror movie was really hard because it was tied between not two directors. It's the same director, 2 different movies. It was either Midsommar or Hereditary. So I chose Hereditary because, one, I think one of you are going to discuss Midsommar at some point, because I feel like when I showed that movie to both of you, you guys were like... Not only was it like beautiful, like the story itself was interesting. I think it's a hard pill to swallow because it does feel long, which is partially why it's like my third favorite. It does have some pacing issues. I'm willing to admit that. But when you first went into the theater, like, because I watched it when it first came out in theaters with my friends. It was like probably like the last showing of the night, and it was with my friends, and so that in itself is like a good memory. It's a core memory. And I remember we didn't watch anything about it. We only saw one trailer, and it was on TV, and it was because it was forced on us. We didn't like go out and like search for the movie itself. We like...
The movie found you.
The movie found me. It's what's the word when like... what's the word? It's a new age film experience. The movie found me.
God.
Even Chrissy groaned at that one.
She was like, come on.
No, but okay, let me explain. So when I first went in, you expect a certain formula for movies. You expect there's one character who really is like the center of attention. It's one of those situations. Mm-hmm. And so when I went in, I thought, spoiler alert, I thought Charlie was going to be the main character, the person we follow around, because she was starting out like that. And even though the mother was a good, like, a section of the movie, it was interesting to see that someone who I thought was going to be a bigger, like, contributing factor was killed off probably in, like, the first, like, 30 minutes of the movie?
Yeah, something like that.
And it was so well done, because it was like, you know, she didn't just die, you know, because she just needed to die. She died for the purpose of moving the movie forward, but also being a huge part of like the ending result, if you know what I mean. So like, I feel like Charlie's death was so shocking to me in theaters. That was the first time I felt legitimately scared during like a modern movie, because it was so unexpected. See like this little girl who you think is going to be a big part of the movie, like running down the line, maybe like the mother saves Charlie, they have like a reconnection at the end because their relationship's kind of estranged, because you know, like this weird dynamic they have like a weird family dynamic that's also a really big contributing
They're just
part.
a dysfunctional family.
Yeah,
in general.
like that whole dinner scene, I could gladly live without seeing again. I felt so, it felt like It felt like when someone in your family is arguing with someone else in your family, it felt like you were at that dinner table. And I think that's a really special thing to put in a movie. Choosing character me. Why can't I speak?
Charlie was an interesting character to you.
Because because she was sort of like kind of forced into this position, and like, but also like she was haunting the shit out of her brother.
Yeah.
I don't know. It was just like an interesting movie that made me like scared for the first time in a long time. And I think it's at my number 3 because it did have its problems, but overall I do think it was like a very well done movie that did actually scare me. And I think how it all came together in the end was satisfying for me, even though it took like 5 hours. It's kind of like the Shining syndrome, where it's too long, but it was just like, oof.
Yeah, I think that when I saw that movie, the first time I saw it was with you. And I remember after we watched it, I said, like, I don't think I liked it. But, like, I couldn't say for sure.
Why you
because
didn't like it?
It was just very weird. And it was, like, I still to this day, for some reason, when I watch that movie, it doesn't hit me the way it hits you. It didn't hit. Like, it did, but it was just very strange. Like, the feeling it left me with was lasting, but, like, in a bad way. I think it's because of what you said. It's probably because it took so long to get to the point, and when it got to the point, it almost felt disappointing to me. Like, I think I just didn't like where they ended up going with it, because it just seemed to it came out of nowhere. Because, like, I've watched it again, and I've tried to see if there are even any signs pointing, and, like...
Really? That's interesting.
I guess there's, like, the whole thing with Charlie and, you know, the bird and whatever, so, like, you know there's some kind of witchcraft thing, but, like, the explanation wasn't satisfying enough to me.
Really?
At the end.
Because I feel like whenever I watch that movie, like when I watched the movie with I think I watched it with Mandy. And Mandy, at like the first thing when she saw that symbol on the grandmother's necklace and like the symbol like somewhere else, she was like, cult. Weird cult shit. And I was like, damn, she's good. But like there are like little elements that like you do catch during the movie that like you're just like, that's weird. But you kind of move along to it. And so, like, unless you're, like, laser focused, you're like, look at, there's a symbol on her necklace that matches the symbol of a book or something like that. I feel like, I don't know, to me, I was able to see, like, those little parts and, like, put together, like, cult. Like, weird. Something weird's going on.
No, yeah, like, I guess I'm trying to say, because, like, I could also see that, too. Like, the second time I watched it through, I was like, alright, like... It's more clear now. I think it's just the actual explanation itself. Like the fact that it ended up, you know, being a cult rather than something else. Because, like, the rest of the movie was super, like, creative and everything. And, like, I guess you don't hear about that, what is it, Pan? What's the god's name? Payman. Like, you don't hear about him. So, like, that's interesting. But it was just how long it took to get to the point. And the explanation itself was just disappointing to me for some reason. I don't know. I've never been able to... Like, I love Midsummer. I think Midsummer's great, but Hereditary, I think. And I also just laugh at the scene with the mom banging her head against the roof.
Really?
Yeah. Like, that whole ending montage when she starts losing her duck quack.
Losing her...
Yeah. When she starts losing her stuff... mentally, it kind of just makes me laugh more than anything. Maybe I'm just morbid.
It also maybe, like, I think also it kind of does throw you into the situation of maybe the family as well, because the family also doesn't know what's going on, because we're kind of like this like presence throughout the film where we're watching this go down. It's kind of like how in the beginning it kind of zooms into like this dollhouse looking thing. It's kind of like we're watching from afar, and like we know what's going on, but they don't.
Well, yeah, the whole fact that she makes miniatures is definitely supposed to be some insight into how we're supposed to feel watching it.
Yeah,
like,
it's definitely
much...
That's why I think it's interesting. That's why I did say it does have its problems.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think it's. What's the word? I think it's important to watch at least.
It
once.
is, and Ari Aster is a very good director. He's very creative. because even that whole thing, like the whole voyeuristic feel of it, it is interesting, and it's an interesting movie in how it was executed. Again, for me personally, good execution, bad idea, I think would be the...
It's definitely a spectrum.
Yeah.
It's definitely like a little leading, but it's still like a cool concept, but it wasn't maybe developed as nicely as you would have liked.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sam, what did you think?
I have never watched Hereditary, honestly.
All right, next. That's fine.
So
I think
it's like I don't know, but it's like it sounds like terrifying, and I don't know what to do.
Well, I have COVID. No, I don't. I'm kidding.
I got vaccinated, it's fine.
Yeah, like a week ago. About a week ago. Okay, so you don't really have too much insight, so that's fine. We can move on to the next subject. So I know that that's my number 3 because of what we discussed. So Rosa, how would you like to go next?
Sure.
Take the wagon. Take the wagon.
I'm Jesus and I'm taking the wheel.
Nice one.
So yeah, Jeepers Creepers I think was my 3rd one, and it's funny because I didn't watch this when it first came out. You literally just showed me.
I was so happy when you were like, I really like that, and then I looked on the list because we have a little list.
Yeah.
And you were just like Jeepers Creepers. I was like, oh.
Well, and here's the thing, when I was making my list, like, I suck at picking favorites of anything, but I kind of just went based off of, like, what would I want to watch again, you know, like that, because I feel like if you can watch a movie multiple times and still enjoy it, like, it's definitely a favorite.
Yeah.
And Jeepers Creepers was, like,
it was cool.
It was the number 3. Because,
I'm going to watch that again tonight.
Absolutely. Because it's super fun. I love Justin Long.
The 3rd one we don't talk about.
No. I've never seen it, so I can't.
You will never. I won't allow it. Sorry, go on.
But it's super fun. Justin Long is awesome. He's always been, like, one of my favorite kind of underrated actors in Hollywood because, like, I feel like he's good, but he always just gets typecast.
Yeah, as, like, the nerdy, tall, skinny boy.
So to see him play kind of a different character was really interesting.
I watched that movie after I watched Dodgeball. And I was imagining Jeepers Creepers as the coach.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's just really nice. And, like, when we were watching it, I kept saying, and even you kept saying, like, for being made in 2001, it's very pretty.
It is really pretty.
It's a very pretty movie. Like, that one shot when he's in the hole and the light's coming down.
Yeah, and he's, like, falling in slow motion. She's like, no!
Yeah, like, that was actually it's just, like, pleasant to watch. And it's definitely something I would watch again.
I totally want that tattoo around my belly button. Can you imagine me rocking that? I literally was like, I want that tattoo. And then I was like, later in life, I was like, no, you don't. I got a tumby, alright? I'm just gonna be a bullseye.
It's also just, like, the dynamic. They did a very good job developing his character, his sister's character, the relationship. Because, like, I felt it when he got taken away at the end. Spoiler alert.
Well, it's all spoiler alert. If you haven't seen Jeepers Creepers, it's been 22 years.
Yeah, but, like, I felt it when he got taken away. And, like, it you know, just the whole ending, the monster was terrifying, even though it's like 2000s makeup. Like, if I saw that thing in real life, I'd be terrified.
Yeah.
The thing can fly. Like,
yeah. You know what's funny is I think that movie, it had the better story and had the better stuff. I think the second movie had the better creeper. Because he's more like wet and swampy looking. Wet.
Wet.
It's more wet. Yeah, I'm glad that you liked that movie.
I did. I liked it a lot.
I always like when I show you things and you're like, huh, I like that. I don't know. It's like when your tattoo artist says that you sat like a rock.
Gives you a little boost.
It's a little boost of ego. It's like, oh, thanks. I have taste. I don't know. Sam, have you ever seen Jeepers Creepers?
Yeah. It was one of the first ones that I watched because my dad is such a fan of them. The one that I've watched the most is the second one with a group of students trapped in a bus.
That one's almost as good, if not.
What?
That one's almost as good. I think it's missing a little bit, but it's almost as good.
Yeah, I liked it. I really enjoyed that one. I I found it very funny too. And
Yeah, it's one of
it
those
was
movies
funny
that
for
is
me.
self-aware.
It's like that's like that thing we we're talking about, how like the revival in like the 90s and 2000s was kind of like, we
Yeah.
know we're kind of stupid, but it's fine because we're stupid.
Yeah, like that was another thing I liked about it. It was charming.
Yeah, it did have a charm to it.
Yeah.
I think with age, things do get a little bit of a charm, because probably when it first came out, people were like, what is this? But like now we're like, oh, this is cute.
Mm-hmm.
It had that like camera look that I like, which I wish we could do again.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the kind
Kind of grainy.
of grain,
Yeah.
like the green, but kind of like the faded look.
Mm-hmm.
It was really pretty. So why would that be your third, do you think?
I think just because like I enjoyed it, but there are other movies I enjoyed more, which like is obviously to come. But yeah, like it's like I said, it was definitely just pleasant to watch. It was like just like it gave me a good warm feeling,
You.
you know. little fuzzlies in my tumsily.
All right, I'm gonna stop you there. Cut. So Sam, this brings us to
Yes.
your movie.
Third favorite movie for when it comes to horror genre. Let's put it as a horror genre, like in quotations. Horror genre for me.
That's fine.
Is Paprika. It's It's an anime film directed by Satoshi Kon, which was a manga artist, animation director on Japan. Passed away on 2010, I think. It was like a 2006 like movie, so it's quite old. It's a Japanese science fiction. So here's when it gets complicated. It's considered mainly psychological thriller. However, there's some aspects of it that makes it terrifying for some people.
Mm-hmm.
The whole concept of the movie, basically what happens is it's a whole like kind of like Inception. There's a lot of criticism around the movie Inception because people seem to think that it is kind of a copy-paste of the movie Paprika.
Okay.
It's basically a team of doctors who are doing this study to investigate people's dreams.
Okay.
And that turns into quite a journey between nightmare world as well. So, and you knowing that it's a nightmare world, you know that your nightmares can get pretty
Yeah.
sometimes. So
My nightmares are
yeah.
nightmares.
Yeah, so the whole movie is there's basically doctor who has a different persona that she uses to go into people's dreams and help them kind of investigate like the deep meaning behind them. Of course, sometimes these people have nightmares, which turns into a more deep situation because you know how nightmares can get. The reason why this movie can be quote unquote scary movie is because of all the horrified like imagery sometimes that is presented on the film. You see like a parade of refrigerators with faces. You see like a kind of creepy story of cinema. So it's like is the basically all this group of scientists who are trying to help people with their dreams, but if these people have seen weird stuff on their dreams, you know there's gonna be weird stuff on the screen. Mm-hmm. So you see people with like heads of like mannequins. You see like all
Nightmare.
this kind of creepy faces, which are like animated, and you know like this big eye openers of like animated people, like
Yeah.
so it gives you like that creepy sense. The transitions are sometimes you see like someone who has like a picture on a shirt, and you zoom into it, and it's like it starts moving. So Paprika, it's really one of those films that you don't really want to show at a children's birthday party. I think that a lot of people feel like just because of an animated film, it is a kid's film.
Mm-hmm.
But no, Paprika is pretty much disturbing sometimes. It can be horrifying, especially with the whole notion of nightmares. And I watched it a long time ago, and let me tell you, to this point in day, I still have a hard time understanding what the fudge was going on in that movie.
What was going on?
It's just one of those movies that if you lose like a minute or like a second, you're lost. You're completely lost.
If you blink, you have no idea where you are.
Yeah, because like every single detail on this movie matters. It's just creepy, and like Japanese cinema can be creepy sometimes.
I'm glad that you brought like Japanese horror like a little bit, but also like a lot of people when they think of horror sometimes they don't think of animation. I know I didn't think of animation, even though there's probably like a lot of really cool horror that hasn't been explored through animation.
So for example, there's like the movie Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli by Hayao Miyazaki, which I guess a lot of people might not consider it like scary, but there's some scary imaginary on the film,
I don't know if that
there's
movie's
the bathhouse
horror.
scene. What?
No, what she's saying
It's
is
not
it has
horror.
some sort
It's
of
not
imagery
horror, but
that's
it
like a
has the
little
scary-
spooky.
Oh, well, if we're talking
it
about,
has like creepy imaginary,
I feel like another example of an animated movie that's like spooky would be 9.
Because if it's animated, people seem to think that it's a kids movie, but in Japanese cinema, not because it's animated, that means it's like most of the stuff that's animated is meant to be for adults,
Mm-hmm.
like from anime to manga, like Japanese people spend more paper on manga than on toilet paper. Like you can tell how much like people consume these forms of content, and Japanese are very good at like creating creepy imaginary from simple images, So I wanted to include that movie that kind of was intense for me in a way.
So, my second favorite horror movie of all time, which is really hard because the top 2 are probably really, really closely tied. Just one has more of a nostalgic meaning to me. It's like one I watched when I was a kid and it really stuck with me, and this one I watched when I was probably in middle school and it stuck with me, but like there's more memory attached to the other one. So my number 2, by a very close margin, is John Carpenter's 1982 remake of The Thing. You guys have both seen this. I showed it to you freshman year and you were like, Taylor, what the... there's something about this movie that's so amazing to me. If I ever watched this movie was when I was at my friend Eileen's cabin up in New Hampshire, and it was her birthday, and she liked this movie a lot, which was surprising to me because I was like, oh, Eileen, you like a horror movie? Because like she isn't really, I don't think she's the type to really like delve deep into like the horror genre, and like to pull out The Thing, I was like, cool. And so I had never seen it, and so the first time I watched it was with a big group of friends, and I went into it like completely unaware of what it was about, and oh my god, what a mistake, because I was like, oh.
I mean, I also didn't know what it was about, but it was just funny to me.
It was kind of funny. But like when you first see like all like the visual effects, you're just like,
yeah, the effects are good for it being an 82. Like it's a good.
I think it's like one of the best like special effects, especially the practical. Mm-hmm. Like it's the best example of like practical special effects that like. Because, like, obviously, like, now we use, like, CGI, which at some point, like, you kind of get, like, tired of it. It, like, loses its, like, charm.
There's a bar or a line.
Yeah, and it's, like, especially if it's bad CGI, it kind of takes me out of the experience. But when you use practical effects, I feel like it's, like, a cool, interesting, like, visual element to the story as well, and it feels more real because it's not like someone sitting in front of a green screen and acting. It's like they're in a situation where they're reacting to like an actual effect that's happening in that moment. And like that scene with the spider head, do you know what I'm talking about, where his head drips off and like and like he like it starts crawling across the floor? Sick.
Stop it, please. I have
Sick.
my feet on the floor.
And like and then the guy like turns around, he goes, "You gotta be shitting me." So good. It was such a good comedic moment mixed with just absolute terrifying like horror, and I love it. Mm-hmm. But also like not only is it visually really good, but the storyline is pretty like good. It's interesting. It's less of like the story, it's like creature feature. So it's,
Yeah, it's like Among Us is what I was gonna say.
Yeah, it's also like Among Us.
Trying to find the imposter the whole time.
Yeah, it's like a story that surrounds like mistrust, betrayal, and it's kind of like a perfect description of like humankind. Like what happens to us when we are put on the bottom of the food chain for once. Even though if we went to like the jungle, we'd totally get eaten by anything. I get eaten by a rabbit, honestly. Knowing my luck.
Having a life crisis now. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So yeah, it's like a cool depiction of what happens to humankind when we don't know who to trust. And it's also a really cool creature. Like the thing itself is a cool concept to think of. It's like the thing I said where it was like really good execution and really good storyline. Like obviously it's from the 80s, so it's not going to be like the modern. If like when they remade this, it lost its charm. Like if you watch the remake version, which is technically a prequel, which is stupid. When you watch like the remade one from like I think it was 2016, 2017, it was 2000 something. It wasn't as effective, and I think it's because they relied so heavily on like the the CGI, and like it lost its charm over time. If you watch it now, it's still something that people can enjoy, but when you watch the new one, it kind of feels like it's lost that. Like I feel like that's a lot of like the theme with especially like remakes of these movies.
The whole thing with remakes is like that could be a whole other podcast too.
Yeah.
Because
some of them are really good and they add a lot, but most of them just try to copy what the original one tried to do, and it takes away the
They're
charm.
cheap.
Yeah. So that's my second favorite movie. It's my second because you'll understand when I say what my first one is. You guys both know what it is, obviously, because it's my personality at this point. But as a film, brilliant. I love it. It's a little tacky because it's the 80s, but that's fine because it's the 80s. You expect it. So what's your second favorite movie, Rosa?
So I picked this one mostly due to nostalgia and also because the first movie I watched. So I referenced it before, but The Woman in Black is probably my second favorite one.
Nice.
I remember watching this in the theater with my mom and my cousin, I think. And my mom always likes to tell the story of how she was sitting in the middle of me and my cousin, and both of us were clutching either arm.
I can imagine Sandy right now.
on her two sides, just like, oh my god! Like every time a crow cawed or whatever. But yeah, it's also just like, I think it's very pretty. I like the aesthetic, like I said.
Yeah, you really do like that like Victorian, like 1800s look too.
Yeah, you see that in my first choice also.
Yeah, well, it's accompanied by another point, which I might have to bleep, but it's fine. Go on.
But yeah, so I really like the aesthetic of it. I like Daniel Radcliffe. He's cool. He's actually like a good actor, I feel like.
The problem with Daniel Radcliffe for me is I cannot look at him without thinking of Harry Potter.
I think that's the problem with a lot of people. He's another one who people typically typecast, but like if you watch him in other stuff, like
he's good, no lie.
He's actually like a good actor. Like I remember I watched Horns too, and that was good.
Oh my god, that movie! I don't even know what happened in that movie.
Yeah, but that's a different.
I have no clue.
That's a different subject. I actually haven't seen that.
It's interesting.
Is it horror?
It's very
kind of.
interesting.
It's kind of more.
It's like a surreal.
Yeah, more surreal.
Yeah.
Cool.
But yeah, so The Woman in Black is definitely. I love the aesthetic of it. I love the storyline. The character is good. The story is well developed for me. And also like. I mean, I think the only thing with it is, like, it does have some jump scares in there.
Yeah,
like,
it's very jump scare heavy.
Yeah, there's definitely jump scares, but there are other scenes where they do build up the tension really well. Like, there's a lot of, like, mirror shots.
I really, really like the, how they displayed the ghosts in that movie. It wasn't like anything like super new, but I especially really like the ending scene where like the train car goes by and he sees all the ghosts.
Yeah.
But then when it goes away, they're gone.
Just the ending, the ending in general.
That's a really solid ending.
It's not what you expect at all. It's definitely like, because you expect it to end happily.
It's also a good closing point too.
Yeah. I mean, there was a second one. The second one wasn't as good in my opinion.
Was he in it or no?
No.
Or was it? It wasn't like a prequel.
No, it was like a sequel. It's basically like an orphanage or whatever gets set up in that house. It was still like good for me just because of my experience with the first one. But yeah, like there's really good like tension built up. There's mirror shots. There's those long hallway shots that kind of make you feel some type of way. Like,
yeah,
it's like I said, it's the first movie I ever saw. The ending just isn't what you expect. Like, because I remember when I first watched it in theaters, like the whole reason why this got to me was because of the story and because of the fact that the ending just wasn't something I could predict. Because most of the horror movies I had seen in the past was like, you know, stuff I could kind of work out in my head. Like, all right, so this lady's gonna die.
This guy stabs this guy. This guy dies.
Exactly.
The
Like,
killer is the mother.
You knew who the main character was. You knew they were gonna live.
The call was coming from inside the house.
Exactly. But like with this one, like it definitely doesn't end how you expect it to. And it's just like it's solid for me. I like it a lot.
That's cool. That's cool. I definitely do see that as being like a movie you would like if I like knew you when this movie came out, I'd be like, Rosa, you need to see this movie because I think you would enjoy it. But then if you were like yourself back then, you'd be like, I don't want to see it. I don't want to see it.
I'd be clutching my mom's arm.
You're like, no.
Mommy!
Yeah. So
My second favorite horror movie of all time is probably Alien. No, Alien is literally one of my favorite movies. The whole idea, like, okay, Alien is a good kind of teaching as to why we should stay the fudge on Earth and stop exploring the universe.
my parents think they were abducted by aliens, and that's how I was created.
The
Sam, do you know
universe
that
just
story?
kind of picked you.
No, but I kind of want to know it now.
Well, we'll see if we can cut this out for time. We'll see. But, so apparently, my parents went to Blockbuster to go rent a movie.
Yeah.
And, because it was, you know, the 90s. And, rest in peace. That's going to be our store soon. So, they went to Blockbuster, and they left a babysitter to, you know, watch my siblings, because they had 3 kids at the time. So, we have witnesses. And they went to go to the video store. Dave's gonna listen to this and be like, Taylor, I understand now. But it's fine. So they went to the video store, and it usually closed at like 10 o'clock where they lived. And they left at like probably like 9. So, and it was like probably a 5-minute drive down the street. And what ended up happening was when they got there, the guy was closing up. And they were like, dude, why are you closing up early? And he's like, I'm closing up late. Like, it's almost like 10 past 10. It was something like that. It was like at least another like 10 or so minutes after, you know, they're supposed to close. So he was closing up late. And so, you know, they were like, yeah, whatever. He's probably just whatever. So they just left it alone. And they went home to my babysitter. Well, our babysitter, because she was also my babysitter when I was growing up. She was freaking out and was like, where have you guys been? You guys left at 9 o'clock. It's now almost like 10:30-ish. I don't know when they came back, but so they were like, what's up? Did you guys just like leave? I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for maybe like a 5-minute babysitting thing. And, you know, they have no idea how a 5-minute trip down the road with no traffic. It was an empty road. It was like the back roads, so there's no cars, and they just lost like a good chunk of time. And then I was shortly conceived later.
They lost like an hour, and then didn't your mom find
Nice.
a piece of metal implanted in her foot? Like
Yeah.
the doctors found a piece of metal implanted in her foot later.
Yeah, they did. It
What?
Yeah, so my mom felt like foot pains, and she was like on the beach one day, and she felt like a severe cramp in her foot. So she thought maybe she stepped on something, and she went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, so we took an x-ray of your foot. Nothing's wrong, you didn't break anything, everything's perfectly fine, but we did find something really weird, and I want to go over this with you. So she's like, okay, sure. And he was like, ma'am, we found a tiny, like, it was like a pinprick size sliver of metal that was implanted inside the bone of her foot. And we were like, pardon?
What?
Yep. And so they found a piece of metal in her foot. They lost an hour, and that was like shortly after. And then shortly after all of that went down, my mom was like, I'm pregnant. And then I was born on Friday the 13th.
So Taylor's
You
an
an
alien,
alien?
baby. In short.
Are you?
I don't want to talk
Are you
about
an
it.
alien?
That would explain a lot.
Like, it can tell you what happens when we're being too just like snoopy on stuff we don't understand, and we're like, oh, we're just gonna take one of the samples to like investigate, and then bam, chaos happens.
Alien,
And the whole
leave
thing-
that shit alone.
Yeah, alien literally means that. So it's kind of like an imposter like Among Us, because it's like, it's kind of like that, you know, like
Everything is among us.
this is the inspiration of Among Us, because like you know about Ripley, you know about like the original, like having a woman character being a badass.
Hell yeah.
That's the best thing on this entire movie.
Especially
And-
because it is regarded as like one of the greats
Yes.
in horror.
Yes. So against a freaking alien, because you know most of horrors have like male characters, or like the male kind of saving the woman and stuff like that. But in here, it really, like, honestly, like, what I loved a lot. My favorite part is Ripley, of course. The whole movie is freaking good. She's taking control over the situation, and she's like, no, you're wrong, and that sounds stupid. We should probably do this, and no one pays attention to her because she's a woman.
Yeah, it was
Like,
also it was really interesting because when I did my like research project on horror movies from the 70s, Alien was one of them, and just like learning about the gender undertones or like the
Yeah.
undertones about the theme of gender. Like apparently the alien monster is supposed to look more like phallic because he's
I
like
can
the
see
enemy.
that.
Yeah.
That's why he looks like a penis.
Yeah.
Oh!
Like even the design
I'm
of the
dumb.
monster and stuff is
Okay,
supposed to
I
play
get
into
it
the
now.
gender
I
stuff.
never knew that.
Yeah, so
I
it was
actually-
really cool to learn about that.
But honestly, like, it's a very terrifying film. Like, it is terrifying, because I guess as humans, we're kind of afraid of the unknown. We're kind of afraid of what's outside. We know that we're not alone in this whole, like, universe.
Yeah, look at
And I
me.
feel
How do you think
like-
I got here?
And I feel like this movie really explores like the worst thing of what could be. Is one of those movies that you probably makes you think a lot about like what should we be doing as humans, and if we are really ready to explore the outside of our planet when things like this could be like not so far away from us, you know?
Yeah, it definitely does a good job of playing on that fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
I do
So,
think that's
yeah.
I do think that's a really interesting like genre that maybe hasn't been too like explored too much. There was a tweet recently that was like horror cannot take place in space, change my mind, and I was like, Alien.
Yeah.
Drum roll, please. We're gonna be discussing our first favorite horror movies, which I was actually surprised by yours.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
Because we saw this so recently.
Oh.
We'll talk about it though. So, my first favorite horror movie, it's no surprise, it's Halloween.
Yeah.
It's the 1978 Halloween.
You can list fun facts about this movie for days.
I literally cannot watch this movie with other people without spouting off random facts. Like, I think the reason that I think honestly it could be limited to what's your favorite horror series, and it'd be the same answer. Halloween is just like the pinnacle, the peak, if you will, of just like what I personally would say is my favorite. So, a little bit about Halloween. It wasn't necessarily the first slasher. That's a big misconception. It wasn't the first. It was just like the first. It was one of the first, but it really was the first that ignited the genre of like slashers, which is just like too iconic to not like talk about, because I feel like it really set a new standard for a genre that probably wasn't like, because before, like, you know, and like maybe like the 50s, 60s, like that whole era was mostly just like, it was kind of like tacky.
Yeah, the slasher genre was running on fumes when Halloween came out. Like, that's why Carpenter couldn't get the funding for it from big studios.
Well, not only that, but it was like, well, it's well, the first thing, it was actually supposed to be called the Babysitter Murders, I think. It was either that or the Babysitter Killers. I'm not sure. I should know this, but I don't. I think it was supposed to be a movie just about, you know, not even about Michael Myers. It wasn't supposed to be like a whole series. It was supposed to be like different films. That's why the Season of the Witch movie was so like not like, no one thinks about it unless like you're really into the Halloween series, because it wasn't meant to be like this long series with Michael Myers. It was meant to be a little story, and it turned into like this huge franchise, which I personally love. I think even the tackiest of the Halloween movies are really funny. Like, H2O was probably the last decent one, but then they came with Halloween Resurrection with Busta Rhymes doing karate.
Yeah, you've been trying to get me to watch that for years.
Please,
I still haven't done it.
I want to watch it so bad. You're gonna love it. It's so 2000s, like, it's so fun. But, so, the reason I think Halloween is probably the best, the first one was probably the best, because the second one was is because they made Michael Myers into, like, a person with a motive, and, like, the others, obviously, like, the sequels. But the reason why he's so scary in the first one is because he doesn't have a motive. It was... There was no plot line of, you know, Michael Myers is Laurie Strode's brother or some weird demon-worshipping stuff. It was just straight to the fact. He escaped from a mental asylum. He found someone. He stalks her. He kills her. Well, he tries to kill her. He kills her friends. In very creative ways, I might add. That scene where he has, like, the blanket over his head and he looks like a ghost and he has, like, glasses on.
Yeah.
Iconic. Brilliant. But the reason it's so scary is because, well, first off, back in the 70s, no one had seen that before. It was, like, the first time you really saw just, like, a new sort of take on the genre as a whole. It was also, like, one of the first times they used, like, different cameras. It was, like, really innovative for the time. But it kind of started a whole series in lore that is continued to this day. And I think in that way, the story itself and Michael Myers as a whole is a timeless character and, like, a timeless sort of, like, plot. Like, I think he's the epitome of evil. Like, even in, like, the, like, in, like, the most, like, popular dialogue of all time in, like, horror movies is talking about he had, like, the darkest eyes, the devil's eyes. He is, like, the absence of humanity. He has no motive, and that's what makes him scary. What makes him scary is the fact that he had no relationship to Laurie Strode prior to this. I think the second movie kind of ruined that a little bit, because once you give someone a motive for killing, it's less scary.
They're redeemable.
You're like, okay. Especially like the Rob Zombie remake, where he's like, yeah, he was abused as a child. And it's like, okay, that was interesting. It's a cool take on it. But it doesn't really...
Can I just say, that movie had the kid from Hitchcock that Will Smith calls Thickness.
Yeah.
And when I saw that on TV a few months ago, like last year or something, I was like, no.
And that's the thing, is that I think Rob Zombie's rendition of it, like, it was a cool take, and it was a cool... Like, I like Rob Zombie's movies, so it's, like, personal, and you're like, okay, that's cool. It's, like, his style. But I think that when you give a killer a motive, it takes away the fear. And that's why this first movie was so brilliant, because, first off, it's an iconic look. It's literally a William Shatner mask they painted white.
Yep.
I wonder how he feels about that to this day. But... And then it was so low budget, too. Like, they literally gave, like, Jamie Lee Curtis, like a handful of cash and said, go to a clothing store and get your own costume, basically. So whatever she wore what she bought for herself, and I think that's just like it's just cool. I know it's also like the nostalgia thing for me. That's why it was so tied with The Thing, because it's so much more impactful for me personally, which I think is fine if you're gonna talk about like your favorite like blanks. Obviously you need experience before you like discuss something that like you obviously are gonna like be like, oh, it's my number one, you know. And there's also like the whole fact that my brother showed it to me, which is like it's just been in my life forever.
My number one movie is Crimson Peak from Guillermo del Toro, is the director. So like
Enough said.
Yeah, enough said there. This is, to me anyway, it's a beautiful movie.
Ugh.
I don't know the lead actress's name, but she's just a beautiful person. They've got Tom Hiddleston.
She is very like uniquely beautiful.
Like she's not conventionally beautiful. She's very like, you know. But Tom Hiddleston's in there. You get a full access pass to his dump truck. Like it's just there's just nice costumes. The cinematography is really nice because it's Guillermo del Toro. He's just very good at, you know, making things pretty and like, you know, fantastical looking.
Good at everything.
Yeah, everything, and just like the whole thing. And the funny thing, I just watched this with Taylor in October.
This was the first movie we'd seen together that neither of us had seen before.
Yeah,
except for Godzilla.
Well, yeah. Let's not talk about that. But yeah, and I remember like it was Halloween, I think, or near Halloween, and we were looking for a movie, and we were both like, "Oh, I've never seen this, but it's Guillermo del Toro. Like, let's watch it." And it was just like it's still to this day the ending gets me, like it just like keeps me thinking. I watched it again this past week, and like the ending is still making my head spin. Because it's another one of those movies that has like a twist.
We're not gonna reveal it
No.
because I feel like everyone needs to see this.
Everyone needs to see this movie, and it's just like it's an amazing story to me.
It's also so. Hello? Do you hear my stomach, Sam?
What?
But yeah, it's just an amazing story. It's not scary. Like one of the first things they say in the beginning is it's a story with ghosts in it. It's not a ghost story, which I think like it describes the whole movie perfectly. And like it's not necessarily scary in the traditional sense. It's more so scary in looking at humanity, I think, is like where it kind of messes people up.
There's your creative writing degree right there.
Graduating in May. But yeah, it's very psychological, good tension scenes, just beautiful movie. Tom Hiddleston, Guillermo del Toro. That's all I have to say.
I also do think that the designs for like the ghosts themselves,
always with
amazing.
him. Yeah.
Another thing is like you said, it's not a ghost story, it's a story with ghosts in it, and like this, like the ghosts you don't see too much, but it's kind of like the unveiling of like what's actually happening.
Yeah, they have a purpose. Like they're not just there to spook you out. They're there for a reason.
It perfectly closes itself up.
Yes, it's definitely like it's satisfying.
It double loops the last scene.
Exactly.
It kind of like puts you in the story, and it fills you.
Yes.
It's delicious. Well, Sam.
Yes.
Please wrap us up with your
Oh my God.
number one choice.
Yes. Okay. My favorite movie. I actually had a hard time with choosing which one because I was debating between another one, but I guess the other one I'll leave it for another episode.
We can put it in honorable mentions if you also want to do. We can also do honorable mentions, just like quick little.
Yeah, I'm gonna put it as an honorable mention, but for me, my favorite one is South Korea's 2020 film Train to Busan.
That was pretty good.
With my incredible, wonderful actor that all my K-drama fans might recognize from the series Guardian, called Gongju. The movie is just, like, I think that like Korean movies and Japanese are very good at really horror films in general.
Yep.
They know what
And-
fucks people up.
They really know how to fuck people up basically, yeah. And the whole premise of the movie is zombie apocalypse that spreads widely throughout Korea, you know?
Yep.
South Korea mainly.
And they're on a train to Busan.
And they're on a train to Busan, which is part of Korea. But the whole premise of it is a father trying to get to Busan with his daughter, and all these different stories. A pregnant lady with his husband, team of teenagers from baseball. Then there's a lot of different characters, but our main characters are they're also great actors, by the way, that I recognize from K-dramas and everything. They all have their stories, and in some way they're connected. The end is heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. I
Not
understand.
gonna lie, the end of the movie is heartbreaking. It's not something that you expect, but it is heartbreaking. I guess expected, but you would not expect it. It was not foreseen, because usually when it's like horror films, at least there's some kind of bright side, with the main character being the father kind of surviving or like making it out, kind of like World War Z kind of deal.
Yeah.
But Train to Busan really takes your heart, shoves it inside, and then just starts squishing every single time. Takes all the characters that you adore the minute that you meet them. It's just a whole destruction into your festival. And what I love about it is how original the whole concept of zombie apocalypse looks for them, with the zombies being like freaking athletes.
Yeah. I do like when
Freaking
zombie
athletes.
movies do go away from like that slow zombie walk thing.
Yeah,
It is a
but
little
this ones are
scarier to
freaking
me.
athletes.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're athletes. They're actually smart. They're on a train, which is kind of like a closed space, and any stop is not guaranteed to safety. And the whole idea of the father having to take care of the daughter, which brings an extra weight into the story, because most of the time the main character is by themselves, kind of saving themselves. But in this time, the character is actually taking care of a person that matters to them. So it's a really wonderful story. And again, the end is heartbreaking, but it's kind of expected. And it kind of infuriates me that that it's not, you know, how it was announced that it was going to be a remake of the movie in
Yeah.
the US, which kind of makes me really mad, because
It's already good. It doesn't need a
To
remake.
trash anyone, but I feel like the problem
trash
is people are not.
Trash them.
Okay, so here's the thing. Yeah, so they're just, I don't think, I've experienced a lot of times when I tell a person like, hey, watch your movie, and they ask me like, is it English dubbed? And I'm like, no, it's original language. We're like, oh, I don't watch original languages because I don't want to read subtitles.
That
which
makes
is
me so
kinda-
mad.
What?
That makes me so mad, because Parasite literally won so many awards, and people were like, why did that win? Like, it's not even English. And I'm like, okay, you can read.
More than what we're used to in American cinema in Hollywood, with World War Z and all that Day of the Dead kind of deal. So I like this one. This is probably, I guess, one of the best zombie apocalypse movies in the whole horror genre. It's different and it's nice and I like it.
Yeah, I did like that, because like obviously I'd never seen like a zombie movie other than like the American, like, you know, like George Romero, like Day of the Dead, Night of the Living Dead, like Day of the you know,
Day of the something.
Day of the something of the dead. You know, like the slow zombies, the fast zombies, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I'd only seen those, but I feel like, you know, it's interesting to see different takes, especially different cultural takes, because people do see death differently in different cultures. So I would love to see like maybe like, I don't know, like different cultures zombie movies would be really cool to compile together and like watch and
Just
see.
foreign horror movies.
Foreign
is
horror
another
movies is
podcast
another really
that
good, because I feel like that's another like thing that people miss out on, because, you know, like you said, subtitles. People are just like, they just don't want to like read subtitles, which obviously that's like limiting like yourself to like nothing. Like some of like the best horror movies like I've ever seen have been foreign horror movies.
It's like I don't know, just not to watch something because you don't want to read the subtitles is a closed-minded way of thinking, and it's a very like almost egotistical because it's like you thinking that your country is better than others.
Unless, of course, it's not accessible to you.
Well,
like,
yeah, if it's not acceptable, but like
obviously, but like if you're able-bodied,
yeah,
if you can read, there's no reason you can't.
Yeah, exactly.
Mention is for all of us. Midsummer.
Yeah.
Because I remember when I first showed that to you, Sam, you were like hiding your face behind blankets, and we were all.
You recorded me on Snapchat. How dare you?
I did, and it's really funny. But I know. I just feel like it was one of those movies where like it's like another thing with like horror fans sometimes, like, you know. This movie in a whole is just gaslighting the movie. It's literally taking like the cult's like aspects of like manipulation and putting it in a movie, but like you kind of follow along. Like at the end of the movie, I literally went, "Good for her."
It's not even just
Yeah.
It's not even just the cult manipulation though. It's also the manipulation of women by men.
That's
and
true.
It's flipped on its head in that movie. Honorable mentions was Color Out of Space.
Color Out of Space. Yeah, Nicolas Cage.
Listen, I don't like Nicolas Cage usually, but he knows how to play a crazy person. And that movie was also just like really pretty.
It was very colorful.
Very
out of
colorful.
space.
And there was shut up. It was a cool story. It's definitely sci-fi horror, which I'm not used to, but just that one scene when the mother and son get like conglomerated
into like a gross.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of like the Thing.
Yeah, it is. I wanted to bring this movie up before, but it's very reminiscent of The Thing and just like that gross kind of
grotesque body horror.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a lot of like really cool body horror movies that like we could probably. I hate saying we can make a podcast, but like, you know, like there's like The Fly, which is another really good honorable mention of mine. Is The Fly. If you want to keep talking about Color Out of Space, though.
I mean, yeah, it's just a cool story. It's very pretty.
I'm so happy I show you these movies, and you're like, I like them.
Is this just proving to you that I like them now? 'Cause did you not believe that I liked them?
Well,
before?
sometimes I show people things, and I have like a weird like, do they like it? Do they like it? Do I have taste? But then, okay, so like branching off that a little bit, The Fly is another really, really cool like body horror movie. It's Jeff Goldblum just deteriorating, and like his like flesh is like falling off, and he's like gross, and because he like mixes himself with the DNA of a fly. Like you should. I think everyone pretty much knows like the premise of The Fly, but when you watch it, it's fucking. Like it's just like fuck. But you know, like having like body horror and like body horror is something like I am very touchy about. It's either like really hit or miss, because it's bordering on torture sometimes, and like I don't like when it goes to that line. But when it's like there's
that
an
scene in The Terrifier.
Yeah, like The Terrifier had like a really gross scene.
I will never, ever, ever, ever watch that movie.
That's honorable. That's a dishonorable mention.
Yes, dishonorable.
Maybe we can do it. Maybe we can do the next episode on our least favorite. That'd be really funny if we ever have the time. But you know, like body horror as a whole is such a cool genre to look into, and The Fly is like really reminiscent of like those two movies that we mentioned. We should watch The Fly. Well, Sam, I think, do you have an honorable mention?
Yes, I do.
Let's bring
I
it.
do have an honorable mention. Mine is Parasite.
Yep, I knew it.
With recent Oscar. Oh my god, dude, that movie is. Okay, listen. I know that most of my my favorite movies are like not like they're from South Korea or Japan, but like,
that's fine.
That movie, fucking hell, with that movie really like targets a lot of, like, I guess what makes it creepy is that it kind of targets a lot of society issues and gives like a twisty, creepy turn into it. What?
It's very much focused on like class and the disparity between the upper class
but like
and the lower
what
class.
I get always from Parasite that always kind of messes me up is, I don't know if you've seen it, the scene where the husband from the housekeeper first appears with his eyes and they're super wide on the kitchen, and you're like, what the fuck is that? But it's like, and then the end always messes me up because you feel like it's true, but what's happening, but you know deep down inside that it's not, that he's always gonna be trapped down there, that no one is, his son is never gonna buy the house or anything. So like that's what messes me up even more. And then the sister dying, like the whole concept is terrifying because every single one of them has their monsters, which makes it even more of a and knowing that those type of people can exist in real life too, it's just, it makes it even more terrifying. It makes you afraid of your own kind of circle of people that you are surrounded with, you know.
I mean, again,
So-
it's a very good example of horror examining like inner demons and kind of making you scared of other people.
Because the scariest the scariest thing in this world is other people.
Yeah,
Because
and
there's
the
'cause-
darkness in them.
Yeah, because like ghosts, you can deny or believe. That could be like an episode.
I believe them.
I do too. It's fine. But like, you know, like ghosts and demons, like, you know, that, like, sure. But like other people being the main thing that scares people is the scariest thing. Because it's not like a
You can't
ghost.
deny they exist.
Yeah, it's not like a ghost that sits in your closet and like scares you, or the symbolism from the Babadook. it's just like, it's like a real person with real human emotions, and there's motives. But if there isn't motives, it's even scarier because then it's just at random and there's nothing you can do.
Yeah, which I think this is a good example of how you don't have to rely on like jump scares or like kind of the usual effects of horror to make a good terrifying movie, you know. But yeah, that's my honorable mention. Probably I mean, other one could be Us, which is another
Any Jordan
Peele. That's another. Hold on, before honorable mention, Jordan Peele.
Jordan Peele in general.
Anything.
It's an honorable
He's really
mention. And Us was a really good movie. I'm still very fucked up by it. The whole idea of having that kind of fear, you know, and the whole the scene that always fucks me is the one that is with the ballerina. She's like, the music. Oh my god! No, hold on. It's the music, dude. The music is the part that is more iconic for me. I remember the whole TikTok trend when it happened, when the movie got released. I would hear the music in every single corner, and to this day, I can still hear it on my mind, and I get the chills. Like that's so like intense for me that it's like. The whole movie for me is a masterpiece.
Get Out is also another, and just like
Jordan.
the fact that he is bringing race as an undertone into it too, because I feel like a lot of horror movies have to do with class, they have to do with gender, but you don't see a lot.
It's because it's so touchy and people like to pretend it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like they act like it doesn't exist and like it doesn't affect us today when clearly it does.
Yeah, and he's bringing that to life.
That
and it's
scene
awesome.
at the end of Get Out when the police car shows up and she's on the ground and there's like a deep like like you're like, oh no, because you know, like obviously the undertones of that scene, and you know like what the outcome could be, and then the friend pops out and everyone in the audience is like, oh my god.
He was like, oh good, you killed that bitch.
Because you know, because like, you know, part of us knew like if it was a white police officer, like who knows how that scene would have played out.
Yeah, you know how based on the whole
which I heard was actually
situation
I heard that was actually like what Jordan Peele wanted to do, but then the test audiences were like, no, that's too sad. Like you need to end on like something a little nicer than that, and he was like, fine. Which was like, it was still effective, but if they did go with it, I do agree that I would be like a little bummed.
Yeah.
Even though it is like the gravity of the situation, I'm like, okay, but we've been living through the gravity of the situation. I just want to see this man be happy.
Yeah, but it's like I mean, those are two probably Get Out, Us, and Parasite are very amazing, great movies. I feel sometimes people don't really realize how good they are because they get shadowed by other, like, I guess, big ticket movies. But yeah, I mean, if those are the types of movies that I enjoy watching, you know, not the ones that are like based on a real story. No, like those are the movies that I enjoy. They target a lot of society issues and a lot of important issues that a lot of people are afraid to talk about in a film. So those are the horror movies that you will see me watching like late at night, not like really like the Annabelle and the Conjuring. Like no, I really like Paranormal Activity. I get there's just not my cup of style, but those three are just the ones that I'm always gonna be like, you need a horror movie? I got 3 for you.
Because there's a sense of realism, for sure.
There's realism, and that's what I appreciate. I don't like the much of like effects and paranormal and stuff. I get there's paranormal, which we can talk about in a different episode, but when it comes to realism, our real lives are terrifying in a way. So I like when that's captured because it makes you afraid of your own life sometimes. So yeah.
Did you have any more? You had like 2 more, right?
Yeah.
You can talk about them.
The Cabin in the Woods.
The Cabin in the Woods, definitely.
It's like the best camp horror movie for me.
It's just enough of rubbing your face in it.
Yeah.
But it's also like in itself like a really like entertaining
It's
movie.
a very
oh my god,
self-aware.
the staff. What are those 2 guys' names?
I forget their names.
I always forget their names too, but the one like I don't think have they mentioned their names? Yes, they do. I forget it though. But their whole interaction is so funny.
Yep.
I heard that most of those scenes were like improvised. Do you want to hear a fun fact?
Go.
So, you know the like stoner guy? I forget his name too. I always forget people's names. It takes me like 3 times to learn people's names.
Is it Mitch?
Something. But I'll call him Gibby. So Gibby, the actor who plays him is supposed to be like, you know, like the stoner, and then Chris Hemsworth, who's supposed to be like the jock, like the really buff one. When it was before he filmed the movie Thor, so he wasn't as buff as like we know him today, but he's still kind of, you know, he's built. But the reason that Gibby isn't like when they go swimming, like he doesn't have his shirt off or he doesn't go swimming and he tries to act like they originally had him scripted to like go swimming with them, but when he took his shirt off, he was more buff than Chris Hemsworth.
I remember you told me that, and I was like, no way.
If you look up a picture of this man's ripped. And so they were like, we can't have the stoner guy
be more ripped
than the guy
jock.
who's supposed to be the jock. But then I was like, but that would be so funny.
It would have been.
That would have been really funny if like we as the audience were like, what? But I do see why they would be like, okay, that's a little distracting.
Yeah.
That concludes the first tape of the Blank Tape podcast. Thank you everyone for listening and hanging out with us during our graveyard shift. Have a wonderful night. We'll see you next time.
Yes.
Maybe not. Peace out, Dave. I'm sorry, I have to burp. I'm trying to be quiet.
You like held out your hand to me, and I was like, am I supposed to keep talking? Because like I was done.